So Mark, we want to give the room some good news. So on a scale of 1 to 5, as you talk to advertisers, where do you believe they are from the standpoint of acceptance of addressable TV as a place to port a lot of their dollars?
4.
4.
No, just kidding. So
4 out of 5.
I think it varies a lot by clients. So I'm going to go with an average of 4. Some are at a 6, some are at a 1. But most of the way, I think we're kind of pushing towards acceptable and understanding. So I'd say average today, I'd give it a 4.
And talk a little bit about what differentiates the 6 from the 1.
I think really it's how involved they're willing to kind of dive into this and accept that it's different, right? It's traded differently, it's bought differently. Fragmentation is a challenge. It's just separate from what everybody's kind of used to. We're not trading on GRPs, it's impressions. So I think just kind of accepting that change and being willing to kind of jump right in, that's really where you see the difference. Brandon mentioned earlier that terminology is kind of something that we always discuss, who's defining what as what. But I think we're kind of seeing that, thankfully, finally, morphing into an overall understanding of how we define this. But on the other hand, whether clients are willing to abandon or learn something new is kind of where it lies.
Yeah, got it. And then, the 6s, what defines them? Is it a category base? Is it just willingness to be innovative?
I think it's willingness in general. I don't think it's a category. We've seen every category. We've touched every category. I mean, we've done thousands of these. And there's definitely not one that's way ahead of the other. It really just comes down to willingness. And you can have 4 clients in the same category, and 3 of them are really involved and all in, and then one of them could be back, or it could be 2 and 2. So I think it's just kind of a general.
So you have in the room a lot of research companies, you have a lot of technology platforms. We just heard from Amobi. What's the one thing you would ask them to do in the next year to help you do addressable at scale for more advertisers so that we could start to continue to see budget share move that way?
Yeah, I think part of it is getting this understanding and moving forward. Education, like I said, I think we're going in the right direction. We talked about kind of aggregation or kind of tying this together and having a unified approach. We do see scale as an issue, and there are many companies trying to rectify that, whether it's the NCC or Xandr kind of repping it, or other companies. So really, I think it's just kind of a unified march to understand and push and accept that it is fragmented, but it's really not that hard. And people that have challenged or tried this, 3 or 4 years ago that say it didn't work or it was too complicated, it's totally different now. We're not reinventing the wheel, but it's just with repetition comes ease. So I think we've kind of moved beyond the challenges that were just 6 months away, or since 6 months ago, a year ago, so on.
Got it. Has a lot of this definitions what the market perception is. Have we done, one of the things I think about, and I'm curious your perspective, I think as an industry, we've conflated targeting with narrowness of target.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that.
So I think that's another misconception is, my brand's not fit for addressable because my target's very broad. And I'm not going to say that's not true, but it's all about how you look at it. So if I'm a tissue company, hopefully everybody's using tissues, very broad target, wouldn't make sense to target that way. But within that, you can have a subset. You could go after a competitor, maybe one line or one SKU is stealing share from you that you haven't seen and you're trying to defend them off. So you could do a subset of that. You can target heavy purchasers of a certain product or premium product, or it could be, it doesn't have to be tissues, it could be anything, but as an example of something that's super broad, but taking a segment within that and really kind of going after that and kind of stealing your share back or maintaining your hold.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about addressable use cases. Obviously, a lot of talk is around using addressability to eliminate some of the natural waste that exists in the linear ecosystem. Whether it's excessive frequency or it's just not being able to hone in on the people that you really care about. Which ones do the advertisers gravitate to the most today?
I think the use cases really vary because we shouldn't be trying to kind of squeeze something into it. It should really understand the objective and what are they trying to do. Are we trying to increase reach? Are we trying to steal share? Are we, what is the overarching goal? And I feel like sometimes, there's announcements coming out and there's kind of these sexy new items that everybody wants to try out, and it becomes just checking off a box, which I think kind of gets you into this perpetual wheel of not really doing exactly what it's intended to do. You're just trying something. So it kind of should start at the beginning, an understanding of what is your ultimate goal as a brand, as a client, as a team, and then that should really dictate the kind of the tactful way that you're using Addressable. And there are, like you said, a multitude of options, but it's really not. You kind of got to understand what the objective is.
Got it. Are there things you think about? I mean, obviously, we spend a lot of time focusing on targeting data, and using data to be able to eliminate waste. Are there other ways that you would use addressability in the future where we ought to be sort of opening up the aperture of how we think about what data we bring into the ad-serving ecosystem?
Yeah, I think we're certainly seeing a significant amount of more data entrance. That's another thing that I always tell everyone. If it didn't work for you a few years ago, where you couldn't kind of get to the target that you were looking for, the measurement that you were intending, that changes almost daily. But in terms of different ways of using, I think there's the traditional media metrics, what networks and day parts actually delivered against your core target, or that target of market switchers that you're looking to go after, or the competitors. And then in addition to that, there's such niche learnings that you can get. Earlier today, we were looking at how the size of a CPG product, the amount of ounces, really dictates the purchase frequency and the overall spend. So if I'm buying a package that's 3.5 ounces versus 4, but one sold as a 2-pack, one sold as a single, and kind of really taking that out and then scaling that across all brands, and how your segments that you initially started with, how does that play into it, and where's your spend going? And how do you kind of bridge all the gaps? So there is a ton of learnings, but really, I feel like a broken record, so sorry, but it really does depend on what you're trying to do, and auto's different from financial, which is different from CPG, and so on and so forth.
Got it. Last question. So, we're basically at the tail end of yet another upfront season. Interesting that this upfront really looked the same as a lot of other upfronts in terms of sort of the industry dynamics. As the world gets more and more addressable, does the upfront continue to be a thing? And if so, how do you see the dynamics of it changing?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two ways to look at it. I think we see the upfront kind of continuing its shift with slightly less clients, a little bit more digital, but at some point there's going to be a fork in the road, which is going to come down to a mix of GDPR, 5G, IPTV, and how does that play? And if privacy becomes more and more of a barrier, I think we'll see actually more shift back to the upfront format, whereas privacy, if it continues as it is, I think we'll see it kind of shift away. So I can't predict that fork, but I do believe that will be the biggest kind of barrier to which way it kind of flows.
But do you envision a world where your upfront is you're committing a certain amount of dollars to NBC Universal that's going to guarantee a certain amount of impressions and sort of the specificity around where that gets placed? This Is Us versus Tonight Show. Does that sort of go away?
I think it could depend. I don't think it's ever going to vanish overnight. I think we'll see trends one way or the other. I do think that will survive for a while, but I don't know if it will continue at the same scale or it could actually increase.
Okay. Well, thanks for the time.
Yeah. Thank you.